Aloha. My wife and I just got back literally last night celebrating our 20-year wedding anniversary in Hawaii. We flew into San Diego. We got in. We actually got home last night at about 1:45 a.m. In the morning. So I'm on island time right now, just so you know. But I am refreshed and excited to be back and be back here with our church family today. Hey, I want to start with a little quiz. So the quiz is this: Do you know what the widest river in the world is? The widest river, all right, I'm going to tell you, it's not the Mississippi, it's not the Amazon, it's not the Nile. The widest river in the world is this body of water called If Only. And thousands of people stand on the banks of this water, and they look at this big body of water called If Only, and they think this river is what separates them from where they are right now, from this life that they're living, to the good life. And if they could just catch a ferry and get over the If Only river, then they would be able to experience joy. You'd be able to experience happiness in your life. You say, well, describe this river. If only I were thinner, then I would be happy. If only I were richer. If only I had more time with my children. If only my children were gone and out of the house. If only I could move. If only I could get out of California. If only we could get out of here. If only I were married, then my life would be amazing. If only I were divorced. If only my skin would be clear of all of these pimples right now. That was for you guys over there, okay? If only my calendar was free. If only I could land that deal. If only my boss wasn't so concerned about the sales and the numbers. If only, then I would have this amazing life. Have you ever stood on the shore of this river called If Only? One purchase away. One promise away. One promotion away. One election away. One romance away from the good life. Now, if I were to be, I'm going to be transparent with you today, just so you know a little bit more about me. This is Confessions of a Sinful Pastor today. So I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, but I struggle with worry. Well, worry is a struggle for me. Worry is a challenge. When I'm in the Spirit, I have great faith. I have faith in who God is and what God can do. But when I am in my flesh, and sometimes I get fleshy. Sometimes don't you get fleshy? And when I'm in the flesh, that's when I struggle with worry. And I worry about all kinds of things. I worry, like, are my kids going to make wise choices and wise decisions? Are my kids going to love God? Are my kids, going to love the church? I worry about my weight. I worry, am I going to have diabetes like my mother? I worry, is anybody going to show up to church on Sunday this week? Or is it just going to be me and my family here this week? I worry about, are the ministries at Crosspoint, are they being done with excellence? I worry about money, and is the church going to have enough money? I worry about so many things that come into my mind. When I'm in my flesh, I have these worry warts. Anyone else here worry? Don't leave me hanging up here by myself, all by myself. If you're at home watching this, just kind of raise your hand right now. Now, some of you don't just worry. You are nervous Nellies. And you worry about all kinds of stuff. I mean, you worry about your health. You worry about how others perceive you. You worry about work. You worry when you use a public restroom that you might get an STD. You worry about all kinds of crazy things. Linus was concerned about his friend Charlie Brown. And so Linus went to Charlie Brown and said, Charlie Brown, you look worried. And Charlie Brown said, I worry about school a lot. And I worry about my worrying about school. And my anxieties have anxieties. Can anyone else relate with Charlie Brown? And in this world, there's all kinds of treatment for worry. You know, you can go to therapy, and I think therapy is a good thing to be able to get counseling in your life. You know, there's times when I've needed counseling in my life, and I think that that's a good thing to be able to do. You know, there's pills you can take, there's diets you can go on, there's conferences that you can attend, there's webinars that you can watch. Spotify even has a great playlist for those of you that are worried. It's just called Bob Marley. Don't worry. Be happy. Today, though, I want to give you another antidote to worry. If you find yourself worrying a lot, if you find yourself at a place where you're looking for peace, if you find yourself at the bank of this river of if only I could get across, then my life would be so much better, but I just can't get there because I'm stuck right here where I'm at. I read the story of 13-year-old Billy. 13-year-old Billy grew up in Missouri. I grew up in Missouri as well. And Missouri is a lot different than the concrete jungles of Southern California. And in Missouri, we have lots of fields. And in Missouri, Billy, he had a job. He had a chore that he had to do around the house. And his chore was he had to go out and get firewood for the family fireplace to keep the house heated. And Billy learned quickly. Billy was 13, and he learned quickly that the best firewood, the wood that burned the best, was the stumps. So he was constantly going out looking for stumps to be able to bring them back for the fireplace. So Billy actually, next to his house was this big field, and he found this big stump, and he went out, and he's like, this is going to be perfect. And so he started pushing on it and pulling and prying. Then he started getting a crowbar, but the roots were so deep. It was so hard to get out of the ground that he worked for hours and hours and hours. He was getting frustrated and angry and sweating like crazy. Couldn't get this stump unearthed. Finally, his father showed up from work, and his father saw his son from a distance, so he walked out, and he was watching his son Billy trying to get this stump out of the ground. And after watching his son going back and forth trying to get the stump out, he looked at him and he said, Billy, I think I know what your problem is. Billy said, what? He said, your problem is you're not using all of your strength. And Billy just exploded. Like, what do you mean? I've been working for hours and hours and hours. I've been using a crowbar. Man, I'm pushing and pulling. I'm using all the strength that I have. What do you mean? Finally, when he calmed down, he said, what do you mean I'm not using all my strength? And his father said, Billy, you didn't ask me for help. You're not using all your strength. I just wonder sometimes, in this world of worry, in this world of need, in this world of challenge, if sometimes we are pushing and pulling and trying to do everything in our strength and everything in our power, if our Heavenly Father doesn't stand by us sometimes and say, hey, you're not using all of your strength. And we're like, what do you mean? I'm doing everything that I possibly know how to do. And he says, listen, I'm here to help you. I'm just waiting for you to ask me for help. We're in this series called Jesus, Hope for Humanity. And this year in 2019, we're studying through the book of John. And if you're looking for a place to be able to start reading the Word of God, to be able to grow your faith and have some faith injections in your life, I would encourage you to start with the book of John. Start reading the book of John, all of our verses of the month. Man, I'm challenging you to read or to memorize a verse a month. Maybe you haven't started. Start this month with John chapter 10 and verse 10. Little Hannah, if she can memorize it, we can memorize it as well. To memorize a verse a month, to hide God's word in our heart so that we won't sin against God. So we find ourselves here today in Jesus, Hope for Humanity. We're studying John chapter 6. And so I want us to look at John 6, chapter 6, verse 1. It says, after this, Jesus crossed over to the far side of the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Sea of Tiberias. Now, quick little timeout. Because in October 2020, I'm actually leading a trip to Israel. And I would love to invite each and every one of you. If you're interested, you can sign up on your connection card. We'll send you some more information out, and we're going to go to the Sea of Galilee. We're actually going to be right here at this place, and we're going to see where this story took place as well, too. So if you're interested, I'd love to give you some more information. So it says, they're on the far side of the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Sea of Tiberias, and a huge crowd kept following Jesus wherever he went. Why did they follow him? Because they saw his miraculous signs and they watched him heal the sick. Then Jesus, he climbed a hill. He sat down with his disciples around him. It was nearly time for the Jewish Passover celebration. Jesus soon saw a huge crowd of people coming to look for him. So turning to Philip, he asked, "Where can we buy bread to feed all these people?" He was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. Philip replied, "Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them." Then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Hey, there's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that with this huge crowd?" "Tell everyone to sit down," Jesus said. So they all sat down on the grassy slopes. The men alone numbered around 5,000. Then Jesus, he took the loaves, gave thanks to God, and distributed them to all the people. Afterward, he did the same thing with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. After everyone was full, Jesus told his disciples, "Now gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted." So they picked up the pieces, and they filled 12 baskets with scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. When the people saw him do this miraculous sign, they exclaimed, "Surely he is the prophet that we have been expecting." Now, I want you to imagine that you're part of the story today. I want you to put yourself there near the Sea of Galilee. I want you to imagine that you are one of the disciples. And you're one of the disciples, and Jesus sees this multitude, this crowd. I mean, the place is packed. There's over 5,000 men there. And anywhere you have 5,000 men, you probably got 10 to 15,000 women and children as well. So you got 20,000 people. It's like Easter. The place is packed out. There are people everywhere, and Jesus is getting ready to preach his message. You're one of the disciples. You're excited. You're giddy for this moment. Everybody is leaning in with expectation. And Jesus, he starts speaking. He starts preaching. He starts at the 9:30 service, and then he just keeps going into the 11 o'clock service. And he just keeps preaching. And next thing you know, it's past noon. Now it's 1 o'clock. He's still preaching. He's still going. You missed the first game. He's still preaching. It goes on until 5 o'clock. He's still preaching this entire time. So you're one of the disciples. The disciples, they form a little committee together, okay? And they pull along the side. They're like, "Hey, listen, we got to talk to him. I mean, he's been preaching all day long. The people are getting hungry. I mean, people, they've got to eat sometime. And you get nominated as one of the disciples to go talk to Jesus about this. Like, hey, what am I going to say? Well, he cares for the people. So just tell him, it's the people. The people are hungry. I'm telling you, he'll dismiss them once he knows it's the people. So sure enough, you kind of sheepishly go up to Jesus. He's in the middle of his message. He's preaching, been preaching all day. And you're like, "Excuse me, Jesus? Me and some of the disciples, we've been talking a little bit. Oh, and by the way, this message today, this is good." It's a good message. You know this whole series you've been doing, like all in one day? It's really good. It's good. I could go all night, okay? I mean, disciples could go all night. But the people, the people, they're getting a little bit hungry. We've been out here all day. I think we should, maybe dismiss them so the people can go get something to eat. And Jesus says, "You feed them." Excuse me? You seen the crowd that's here? Yeah, you feed them. So you go back to your committee. You go back to the disciples. Hey, did you talk to him? What did he say? Did you talk about the people? And I talked to him. He said, "We're supposed to feed them." He said, "What?" Yeah, we're supposed to feed them. And so it's like, what do we have? And then all of a sudden one disciple says, well, you know what? There's this little kid that's got 5 loaves. He's got like a little leftover California fish grill meal here. He's got 2 fish, and he's got 5 loaves. But what good is that going to do? I mean, there's so many people here. This isn't going to go anywhere at all. So go back to Jesus. I mean, he's got to dismiss him. So sure enough, Jesus says, hey, listen, set them down in groups of 50. There's 20,000 people, 5,000 men there, plus women and children. Excuse me, set them down in groups of 50? Have you ever worked with people before? People don't do what you want them to do without asking questions. Can you imagine trying to get all these people grouped up in groups of 50? People have all kinds of questions. Everybody's questioning. There's all kinds of chiefs, not enough Indians. And so you got these disciples say, hey, I need you to get here, count them off. Okay, we got 50 right over here. You got this big guy, okay, he's trying to get in line, okay, with the rest of them. You're like, hey, listen. You can't go in that group right there. I need you to go over here. He's like, what do you mean go in that group? You gonna give me something to eat? Listen, just get in a group. You guys get here. They get them all in groups of 50. And then Jesus, he takes this little boy's lunch, fish and chips, and he blesses it, and he prays over it. After he prays over it, Simon's like, you gonna pray some more over that? That's what we're gonna eat all day? Then he gives it to his disciples, and he says, now I want you to distribute this out to everybody. Now picture this for a moment. You're one of the disciples. You've got a portion of 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now listen, when I heard this story as a kid, I thought, what kind of mom packs 5 loaves of bread for a little kid? I mean, I thought like Wonder Bread, right? Like, got 5 loaves of bread there. This is like little biscuits. And imagine this, you got these little biscuits and you've got this fish and you've got to distribute them out to thousands of people. And Jesus says, yeah, go ahead and feed them all, go. So you start with the very first person, okay? And you're like, hey, take just a little bit. This guy takes a big old piece of bread. I said a little bit, you glutton, come on, man. It's got to go a long ways. And then here's where the miracle happened. The miracle happened in the disciples' hands. And this is fascinating because the miracle didn't happen in the master's hands. It didn't happen in Jesus' hands. The miracle happened in the disciples' hands as they trusted what God told them to do, and they put them in groups of 50, and they took what God gave them, and they took what they had in their hands, and they began to distribute it out. God began to multiply what was in their hands. Now, I want to give you a few lessons today that we learned from John chapter 6. The first lesson I call the yardstick lesson. And the yardstick lesson is this: don't measure your problem by your own abilities. Don't measure your problem by your own abilities. So often what we do is we get everything together based upon our own abilities, and we measure it against what our problem is there, and we're like, I don't have enough money to pull this off. I don't have enough. I'm not enough to be able to get this done. And that's when this worry starts kicking in, because we're measuring everything. We're trying to measure our ability, trying to measure everything we have compared to the problem. We're saying it doesn't all measure up. I can just picture Philip, one of the disciples, just worrying. Jesus saying, hey, set them down. We're going to feed them. So how are we going to import this much food in? How are we going to keep the food hot? How are we going to distribute it to thousands of people? Who's going to clean it all up? I mean, we got health permits as well, too. And liability, don't forget about the liability either. And this overdrive of worry just kicks in. And it happens so naturally to some of us. And God, at times, will call you to do things that don't always measure up. Sometimes it seems impossible. We have a core value here at Crosspoint called faith. And it's found from Hebrews. And Hebrews says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. And God at times will call you to take a step of faith. And you can't always measure it up based upon your ability. And that's exactly what faith is. Faith is a matter of trusting God even when you don't have it all figured out. We say it like this: we are faith-filled, big-thinking, bet-the-farm risk takers. We will not insult God with small thinking and safe living. See, faith is to go out on the edge. Faith is to get out of your comfort zone and into the faith zone. And here's the true test of faith. When you're out of place, when you say, God, I need you to show up here, because if you don't show up, this is going to be a disaster. It's not going to work out, because according to the yardstick, it doesn't all measure up. That's when you know that you're operating in faith. Here's the second lesson. It's the lesson of the scales. Don't try to balance it all out. See, we always want to balance it all out. Jesus said, how much food do we have, is what he asked the disciples. How much do we have? They said 5 loaves, 2 fish. Have you ever tried to throw everything that you have in and it's still not enough? You throw in as many hours as you can work, you still can't get it done. You throw in all of your money, it's still not enough. You have more month left over than you have money. Does that ever happen to you? You throw it all in. You throw in all your manpower. You throw in all of your love that you have, but it's still not enough. I mean, here's 5,000 hungry men. 15,000, 20,000 people. And what do you throw in? 2 fish and 5 biscuits. And the scales don't move. And here's what God wants to teach you in that moment. Little is much when I'm in it. We used to sing this hymn growing up in our church. Little is much when God is in it. Little is much when God is in it. And he goes to his disciple and says, what do you have? And Andrew says this. He stopped one sentence short of being the hero in the story. Because here's what he said. He said, Jesus, we have 5 loaves and 2 fish. And if he would have stopped right there, he would have been the hero of the story. We've got 5 loaves, 2 fish. You can do it, God. You can do it. You can do it, Jesus. But he didn't. He said, we've got 5 loaves and 2 fish. But what is that amongst so many people? There's too many people. It's not enough. It doesn't tip the scales. And God says, I want you to know that little is much when I'm in it. And here's the third lesson that I learned in this story. It's the lesson of the spreadsheet. The lesson of the spreadsheet. Don't worry about how God got to the bottom line. Listen, I love spreadsheets. Anybody else love spreadsheets here? I love P&Ls, okay? I can read P&L really well. I love Excel spreadsheets. I love to see it all out. And some people are like math-minded, okay? I'm more math-minded along the way. And it's like, okay, and what I do is I look at the spreadsheet. I look down to the bottom line. I'm like, okay, is it in the red? Is it in the black? I can get there real quick. And then what I do is I start going back up to the front to figure out how we got there. And I'm like, okay, now I can see how that got there. I love spreadsheets to be able to get it all figured out to the bottom line. How did we get there? Here's the bottom line of John chapter 6, 1 through 14. They fed everybody, it says. This was an all-you-could-eat buffet of fish and chips. And it was, by the way, I heard Jamie's message last week. Did you guys enjoy Jamie Ragle last week? Jamie do a good job. I heard Jamie's joke about the buffet. I won't repeat it, but I thought it was kind of funny. Here's all these men, women, and children. They eat as much as they want. And by the way, okay, every time Shannon and I go out to eat with somebody, we're out to eat, there's always at least one person that's like, I don't eat fish, okay? I don't like fish, okay? It's like, hey, I just don't eat fish. I don't like fish. There's always that one person. Can I tell you, all these thousands of people there, none of them said, we don't want the fish today. None of them said, we don't like fish, we just don't eat fish. Every one of them loved the fish that day because it was uncursed fish. It was uncursed biscuits and bread. Probably didn't have any calories in it at all, okay? No carbs. It was amazing. Everyone ate it, said, this is the best meal we've ever had in our life. Unbelievable. Fish and bread. Unbelievable. And so they liked it so much. We got to have some more of that. Give us some more. Give us some more. Disciples keep distributing it. Finally, they get to the place where like, okay, I'm full. That's enough. And then what does Jesus tell them to do? Jesus says, I want you to go back and I want you to collect all the scraps that are left over. Let's see what the bottom line is. Let's see where the math plays itself out. Let's see, are we in the plus or the negative? Are we in the red or are we in the black? Let's see what happens. And I think Jesus asked him to go pick out the rest, not because he was like green, not because Jesus was like anti-litter. He had a purpose behind him going and picking up all the leftovers. And sure enough, all the disciples go out amongst all the crowd, all the groups, pick up all the leftovers, and they come back with how much? 12 basketfuls. More than what they started with. And here's the lesson. God says, I'll take care of the bottom line. Trust me with the bottom line. And I find it interesting that there's 12 baskets left. Because you know how many disciples there are? 12 disciples. It was almost as if Jesus was saying, you guys were all worried. You guys were all freaked out. Okay, are we going to have enough food? I'm giving every single one of you guys a doggy bag. Every one of you are taking a basket home so you can see the spreadsheet, the bottom line, that little is much whenever I am in it. Christine Caine is this great speaker. She says this. She says, when we expect instead of worry, then we can live with a heart full of hope. I want to challenge you to get to this place where you expect God to work in your life instead of worry if God's going to work in your life. By the way, here's the antidote to worry. The antidote to worry is worship. Did you know if you can worry, you can worship? Because you know what worry is? It's thinking a thought over and over and over and over again. And what you focus on magnifies and grows. And you worry about if only, what if, and you just do it over and over and over and over and over and over again, and guess what? It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. If you know how to do that, you'll be really good at worship. Because here's what worship is. It's when you focus on God, and when you focus upon His Word, and you think about it over and over and over again. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. We are more than conquerors through Him that loved us. We are more than conquerors through Him that loved us. Greater is He that's in us than he that is in the world. Greater is He that's in us than he that is in the world. And when you just begin to think that thought over and over and over and over, that's called worship. When you begin to sing about God and His faithfulness, and you begin to sing the lyrics over and over and over, guess what? That is worship, and that is how your faith is built. If you know how to worry, you know how to worship. I read this story about this family that were all trapeze artists. You ever been to like the carnival? You ever been to the fair? You ever been to the place where they have the trapeze artists? And they just fly through the air and they catch each other. And they were doing this interview with this family that were all these incredible trapeze artists. And they said, tell us the secret. What is the secret to your family being so great at the trapeze? And they said, this is the secret. You trust the catcher. Because the flyer isn't in control. It's the catcher that's in control because the catcher does everything. See, the flyer flies and shrinks and stretches its arms out wide. And that's whenever they're caught and pulled into safety. And they said the worst thing that you can do as the trapeze artist is to try to catch the catcher. Because if you try to catch the catcher, you may break their wrist, you may break your own wrist, you may pull them down. There's so many bad things that can happen. They said the flyer flies, the catcher catches. But the flyer has to trust with their arms outstretched that the catcher will be them. You know, in this great trapeze act called salvation, God is the catcher. We are the flyer. I got a text from a friend of mine this morning after this message. It was watching online and said, it brings a whole new idea to the thought of frequent flyer. Because we're frequently flying. And God is saying, do you trust me? Will you trust him that his grip is sturdy? That his hands are open? That he's ready to catch you? Can we move from worry to a place of worship?